Hello everyone. In this video, I would like to talk about how does one select a coach. This comes from a lot of experience of having worked with multiple clients and hundreds of readers over the last 10 years in the space of coaching. Very often, I've seen organizations ask me that, hey, Anand, can you help me get a business coach? Can you help me get someone who's been a CEO or have been a CMO or has been a CFO and is now into coaching? Uh, can you get me somebody who is an HR person who is now a coach and hence can be a better coach? So many times I end up asking questions to these companies as to why do you insist that a coach that you are selecting has to have a particular background? And the natural bias that comes in the response is if the person has been a CEO, he or she would have understood the challenges that a CEO would face, and hence it is quite likely that the current person who's to be coached is a CEO himself. So I think the blend will be right, and hence I need a CEO coach who is already been a CEO in the past. Uh, and the more I listen to these kind of comments, it makes me quite curious as to what effort are people making to try to understand the entire process of coaching itself in the first place. Uh, the the interesting observation that I have is that if I was a CEO in the past and I'm now coaching a CEO, it's quite likely that as a human being, I would have my own biases as to how a CEO should actually run his or her business. Because I was there and I've done it and I've been there, done it. So I have a point of view and I know what works in my point of view and what doesn't work. So the whole notion that if I had a CEO, CFO, CMO background, I would be a better coach to coach leaders who are in those kind of roles itself is flawed, in my opinion. Because in coaching, the most important aspect that a coach needs to consciously follow is not to set in his or her bias into the entire coaching conversation and how he would, uh, you know, help the coachee lead himself or herself. And it's quite natural that there would be an unconscious or subconscious bias if one came from a particular background and was coaching leaders of a similar background. I would argue that it would work best when one was mentoring leaders versus coaching leaders. Hence, to answer the question as to how do you select a coach, I would actually say, based on my experience, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure there could be different contrarian points of views on this, is one should pick a coach who actually does not come from any background that you come from. A coach who is adept at asking questions, is curious about you, understanding what you do, how you approach things, and can actually ask you questions from a frame where there is a level of lack of knowledge of what you do, and there is an underlying innocence and curiosity in trying to understand what you do, and can offer you sometimes cues and suggestions as a part of this questioning process that would help trigger you to think out of the box. That is the kind of coach who would work best for people. However, if I were to not follow that and actually look at people who already have prior experience or have spent maybe a decade or so doing what I'm doing today, it's quite likely that I'm seeking advice versus seeking coaching. The difference between the process of seeking advice and following the coaching process is, in the coaching process, the leader is building one's own muscle to think and wade through issues and problems. But in an advisory process, the leader is leaning on the advisor or the mentor, as I would call, to actually share his or her experience so that one could take a leaf out of that experience and try to implement if it is contextual in one's area of work. And that is where the muscle that is required to be built does not get built through the advisory or mentoring process. But in coaching, The process itself enables the coachee or the leader to think on his own or her own feet and evolve solutions and build the capability to evolve solutions as and when they may experience such uncertain or ambiguous situations in the future. And they do not need a person to advise them at that moment because they have built the muscle to think through this ambiguity and complexity by asking themselves questions that their coach may have asked, or learning the technique of asking and probing in their own minds and looking out for answers that are hidden deep down within. Hence, my suggestion would be, and from my experience would be, to go with an unbiased and unprejudiced way when you look at your coach, and not expect your coach to be as accomplished or as capable or from the background that you come from. But you have a coach who is curious and who is able to provoke you to think by asking the questions with no bias and no prejudice in whatever he or she does. Hope this was helpful. Thank you.